Standing at the aisle dressed in a white wedding gown, YN blinked twice and looked at the man waiting to marry her. Her supposed groom smiled at her a wide, toothless grin. Well, not entirely toothless. He was missing one of his top front teeth, and the rest weren't doing much better. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, and he was almost bald, save for a few said strands of hair clinging to the back of his head. YN looked away, disgusted. That's when she caught sight of her aunt and uncle, sitting in the front row, grinning like they'd just won the lottery. They probably felt like they had. YN, as if turning me into their maid wasn't enough, now they're selling off my future for money. She muttered and looked down, biting the inside of her cheek to hold back tears. Her heart ached, more than ever. She missed her parents today. In a shadowy alley on the other side of town, Kim Taehyung, the infamous Mafia king, ran with a gun in his hand. Gunshots rang out, echoing off the alley walls. He had come to a nearby warehouse to deliver weapons, but someone in his gang had betrayed him, leaking his location to their enemies. Now he was under attack. Taehyung, bloody bastards, he said, gritting his teeth. With deadly precision, he took down every last one of them. Then, like nothing happened, he calmly lit a cigarette, smoke curling around his sharp jawline. Officiant, Miss YN, do you take Mr. William as your lawful husband? YN looked up slowly, her eyes scanned the wedding venue. Suddenly, all her so-called relatives were here, people who never once showed up when she cried herself to sleep in her uncle's house. But now that she was marrying a rich old man, they all came running. William, darling, what are you thinking? Her old groom asked, smiling creepily. She turned her head and looked at him, a wrinkled face, that missing tooth, the smell of old perfume and greed. Aunt, YN, we don't have all day, just say I do already, she yelled a little, being impatient. YN took a deep breath, then squared her shoulders. YN, there's no way I'm marrying this old hag. William, what did you just say? YN, I said I'm not marrying you. Grandpa, go find yourself a coffin. Gasps exploded through the crowd. Before anyone could react, YN grabbed her dress and bolted down the aisle, running as fast as she could in heels straight out of the wedding hall and into the unknown. YN's heels clacked wildly against the pavement as she ran, her wedding dress billowing like a runaway parachute behind her. Her veil tore on a sharp bush, but she didn't stop. YN, no way, I'm not letting them sell me off like a used tea kettle. Behind her, she heard angry shouting. Her uncle's voice echoed down the street. Uncle, YN, come back here right now. Aunt, think of the money. Of course, the money, that's all they ever cared about. Her vision blurred with tears as she turned a sharp corner into a narrow side street. She nearly tripped but caught herself. She kept running, running from that life, from their control, from that creepy old man and his coffin breath. But the adrenaline was wearing off, and the weight of the gown felt heavier with every step. Her feet burned, her chest ached. She reached a quieter street and slowed down, hiding behind a dumpster, struggling to breathe. For a moment, she just sat there, alone, exhausted, tears finally falling. YN, Mom, Dad, if you're watching, I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it. I wish you were here. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. Her dress was dirty, her hands were scraped, but for the first time in years, she felt free. Then she heard voices again. William's goons were closing in. Goons, she went this way. Her eyes widened. YN, crap. She looked around frantically, and that's when she saw it, a sleek black car, parked at the edge of the alley. The back door was slightly open, like a whisper from the universe saying, hide here. Without thinking, she ran to it and slipped inside, curling up in the back seat like a terrified cat. Her heart pounded in her ears. YN, please, just let me rest for 1 second. She didn't know whose car it was. She didn't care. Anything was better than going back. The surroundings are quiet now, just the soft crackle of burning crates and the distant hum of sirens no one would dare call. Taehyung, cold and calm as ever, walked out of the alley, still dusting ash off his black jacket. He opened the door of his sleek black car and slid into the driver's seat. The engine purred to life. But then, he stilled, his sharp eyes narrowed. He could feel it, a presence. Someone was in the car with him. Without a word, He reached for his gun and silently clicked the safety off. His finger hovered over the trigger as he slowly tilted his head, listening, and then he heard it, soft snoring. Frowning, Taehyung glanced into the rearview mirror. There, in the back seat, curled up like a baby deer, was a girl, wearing a wedding dress, fast asleep, a smudge of dirt on her cheek, mascara smudged from crying. Taehyung, what the hell? He muttered under his breath. He turned and looked at her directly, raising an eyebrow. A bride? He leaned slightly closer, inspecting her like she was some weird, possibly dangerous stray cat. Just then, Yn stirred, blinking slowly. Her eyes met his. She sat up, still groggy, veil half falling off, cheeks flushed. She yawns. Yn, what? Then her eyes widened. She stared at the very serious, very handsome man in the front seat. He had a gun on his lap, and she realized she was in a very wrong car. Taehyung, who are you, and what the hell are you doing in my car? Yn, I can't tell you that, she said, panicking. He stared at her like she ate his favorite strawberries. Taehyung, you've got 10 seconds to explain, or I dump you on the street. She clutched her dress tighter, heart pounding. His jaw tightened, his voice turned sharp. Taehyung, get out. I don't need a stripper. Yn, excuse me. Unbothered, he took out his phone and dialed with one hand. Taehyung yelling into the phone, Jimin, you jerk. How many times do I have to tell you not to send strippers to me? I'm not interested in that crap. Yn gasped, face flushing red with rage. Yn, WH80, did you just say, do I look like a stripper to you? Taehyung flatly, shut up. I'm not talking to you. Yn, you're literally talking about me. On the other end, Jimin laughed like he was watching a drama unfold. Jimin, bro, I didn't send anyone. Seems like you found your own trouble. Good luck. Taehyung hung up and turned to her again. Taehyung, get out. Yn snapping. Trust me, I'm not dying to stay here. She grabbed the door handle. Boom. A gunshot tore through the air outside. Yn screamed, clutching her chest as she flinched back into the seat. Taehyung's eyes snapped to the rearview. Enemy cars. Taehyung, shit. No more time. He slammed the gear shift, tires screeching as the car peeled off into the night. Bullets whizzed past. Yn screamed again and cried out. Yn, what the hell is going on? The car tore through the empty streets, tires screeching, gunshots echoing behind them like firecrackers from hell. Yn clutched the back seat like it was a lifeboat in a storm, heart thundering louder than the engine. Yn panicking. Oh my god, are those bullets? Taehyung, unfazed, twisted the wheel with one hand, the other resting on the gear shift, jaw clenched, eyes laser focused. Taehyung calmly, yes, sit down and shut up. Yn, I am sitting. Oh my god, I don't want to die in a wedding dress. Another shot whizzed past the window. She screamed, ducked, and without thinking, scrambled forward, crawling from the back seat like a terrified kitten. Taehyung, stay back. Yn panicked. Nope, I'm dying with you, not alone. Before he could stop her, she was already halfway over the center console, heels tangled in the seatbelt, dress puffed up like a marshmallow. Yn, I'm too young to be shot. I haven't even kissed a boy properly. Taehyung swerved, avoiding a spike strip with military precision. Taehyung gritting his teeth. Woman, if you mess up my steering. She didn't wait to hear the end. She flung herself onto his lap, well, sort of next to it, and shoved her head under his long black coat, her hands clutching his waist like he was her last anchor on earth. Yn muffled, I'm hiding. You're warm. Don't move. Taehyung glanced down for a split second, face blank, coat half open with a panicked bride curled underneath it like a gremlin. Taehyung, what the actual hell? Yn from under the coat. This is my safe zone now. Don't talk to me. A bullet ricocheted off the back of the car. Taehyung sighed and accelerated. Taehyung, of all the cars you could have hidden in, Yn still under the coat. Hell, I hide in hell to save myself from old hag. They drove in silence for a beat, one calm, one completely losing it under a Mafia king's coat. Then, Yn voice trembling, are they still chasing us? Taehyung deadpan, no, you scared them off with your screaming. She smacked his side blindly from under the coat. Yn, you're not funny. Taehyung, I wasn't trying to be. Yn slowly peeked out from under his coat, her big doe eyes blinking at him like a confused bunny in traffic. Yn whispering, are you? An undercover agent? Are they Mafia? Taehyung didn't even blink and said casually. Taehyung, yeah, they're Mafia. And they're my enemies. He shifted gears effortlessly. Her mouth dropped slightly, concern growing in her voice. Y or N? Then you should call your police friends and arrest them. Mafia people should be punished. They're very, very bad. She pouted slightly, shaking her head like a disapproving preschool teacher. Taehyung glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, amused. Taehyung chuckled darkly and leaned back in his seat, one hand still on the wheel. Taehyung, bad? Sweetheart, we're not bad, we're dangerous. Yn blinked, her head tilted slightly. Yn, we. He smirked, his voice low and calm to calm. Taehyung, I'm not the police, princess, I'm their king. Kim Taehyung. He turned his head slightly and met her gaze. There was a beat of silence. Yn's eyes went wide full, cartoon-level panic. She scooted away from him with a tiny yelp and practically dove into the passenger seat like she just realized she'd been cuddling with a tiger, hugging herself as if she could disappear into the leather. Taehyung smirked, feeling satisfied. Taehyung, scared now? Yn, and no, I mean, yes, I mean I don't know what I mean. She looked around in a panic, trying to find an escape route in a moving car. Then another loud gunshot rang behind them. She screamed, ducked, and crawled forward on instinct right into his lap. Taehyung, can you not crawl on me while I'm driving, Mrs. William? She looked up confused. He pointed at the pendant around her neck, raising an eyebrow. Taehyung, says Mrs. William right there. Cute wedding gift. Yn's eyes widened in disgust. She yanked the pendant off with a frustrated noise and tossed it onto the dashboard like it burned her. Y or N? Don't call me that. I didn't marry him, okay? They forced me to wear it. You can call me Yn. Taehyung scoffing. You left your husband for me, my stripper. Very disappointing. Mrs. William. Yn, I am not a stripper. And don't call me Mrs. William. Taehyung. But your name's written right there, Mrs. William. Y or N? I am not Mrs. William. She crossed her arms dramatically and stared out the window, fuming. Taehyung chuckled under his breath, clearly entertained. Taehyung, sure thing, Mrs. William. Yn, stop calling me that. Taehyung, whatever you say, Mrs. William. Y or N? You're worse than my aunt. Taehyung, I'm worse than everything and everyone you've ever met, sweetheart. He said it with a dangerous smirk that made her stomach twist. Y or N gulped. Suddenly she remembers she's arguing with a mafia boss. Her eyes flicked toward the gun resting between them. Y or N nervously. I want to go. Please. I'm not rich. If you kidnap me, no one will pay. And I'm not even that hot or sexy that you'd wanna. You know, I'm just a totally average girl. Taehyung looked amused, clearly enjoying her panic. Taehyung, then why'd you sneak into my car to be my stripper, Mrs. William? Y or N? Ugh, I'm not a stripper and stop calling me that. She let out a frustrated cry. Taehyung pressed his lips together, fighting back a laugh. Yn, if I knew it was a mafia's car, I'd have hidden in a trash can instead. Taehyung checked his watch. 7:00 p.m. Y or N rambling now. I ran away from my wedding, okay? That's why I'm in this gown. My uncle tried to marry me off to some rich old guy. Like, how is a 24-year-old beautiful girl like me supposed to marry a 72-year-old man with no teeth and half his hair gone? It's insane. She kept talking, not noticing how quiet he'd gone again. He focused on the road, jaw tight, eyes sharp. A few minutes later, Taehyung pulled over into a crowded street lit by neon signs and blinking traffic. Taehyung, get out, and spare my ears. Yn blinking. What? Where will I go? Without answering, Taehyung pulled out his gun and casually waved it at her. Taehyung, want me to send you to heaven, sweetheart? He said calmly.Yn's eyes went wide with horror. She forgot again that she's with a mafia. Y or N scrambled to open the door and ran without looking back. Taehyung leaned back in his seat, resting his arm on the window frame. He was her crossing the road, hugging herself against the evening chill. He was about to drive off when his eyes narrowed. A red dot flickered on her shoulder. Laser sight. His blood ran cold. Sniper. Without thinking, he jumped out of the car and sprinted toward her. Y or N felt a pull in her forearm, and in the next moment she bumped with a hard chest. Right then, a gunshot cracked through the air. She screamed and buried her face in his chest. People around them shouted and ducked for cover. Chaos exploded as screams filled the street. Bullets rained down like a storm, aiming them. Taehyung grabbed Wyan's wrist and pulled her into a narrow alley, weaving between trash bins and crates. Why are N breathless? Why are we running? Taehyung irritated. To save our lives. Why else? Wyan confused. But you're the Mafia king. Real kings don't run, they face their enemies head on. Taehyung deadpan. There are hundreds of them. I'm one man. Why are N serious? So what? A real king should be able to kill thousands by himself. Taehyung gave her an unbelievable look. He yanked her behind a concrete pillar just as more bullets slammed into the walls around them. Wyan scolding. You shouldn't be hiding. Go and fight. Mafia kings are supposed to wipe out all their enemies with one glare. I've seen it in dramas. Taehyung dryly. I've got 5 bullets in my gun. If you don't shut that pretty mouth, I'll use all 5 in it. Wyan opened her mouth to argue, saw his murderous glare and promptly shut it, nodding like an obedient puppy. A moment of silence. Then, there they are. One of the enemies spotted them. Taehyung cursed under his breath. He grabbed Yn again and pushed her behind him just as a fresh wave of bullets tore through the alley. With one swift move, he spun out and fired clean headshot, then another, and another. 3 bodies hit the ground. Yn screaming, "Stop it, it's creepy." Taehyung, "Shut that pretty mouth of yours," he said, gritting his teeth, and shoot another man who's right behind Yn. Yn, okay, maybe you are kinda cool, Taehyung. Kinda, he scoffed. Suddenly, a man lunged at him from the side. Taehyung dodged, elbowed him in the throat, and pinned him against the wall. Another one grabbed Yn from behind. She screamed, "Yn, Mr. Mafia King." He turned just in time to see her struggling. His eyes darkened. Without a second thought, he raised his gun and shot perfect aim, right past her shoulder. The man dropped instantly. Yn collapsed into his chest, trembling. Taehyung low voice, teasing, "You should stay behind me, Mrs. William." Yn glaring, "Not the time." He chuckled, wrapped one arm around her protectively, and raised his gun again. Taehyung, "Stay close and try not to die. I hate dragging corpses." Saying that, he shoot 2 men back to back, snatching their gun, kick on man on his face, breaking his jaw. Taehyung, "Bastards. Yn, you're scary." Taehyung, "Thanks for the compliment." They somehow made it back to the car. Taehyung slammed the door shut, barely catching his breath, and hit the gas. The tires screeched as the car roared down the dark street at full speed. Rain had started falling somewhere along the drive, soft and steady like the world was finally beginning to breathe again. Yn, "Great, I'm back in this death car again. Why on earth were they trying to kill me?" she said, panicking, hugging herself. Taehyung, "Because they saw you with me, and assumed you're important to me." He checked the rearview mirror, making sure no one was still chasing them. Yn blinking, "Wait, what does that even mean?" Taehyung calmly, "It means, Mrs. William, your life's in danger now. They might try to find you, follow you, kidnap you, maybe worse." Wyan's jaw dropped. She slumped in her seat, looking like her soul just left her body. Yn, "Oh my god. I just wanted to run from one old man and now I'm being hunted by all the scary men." She groaned and tugged at her hair. Yn desperate, "Do me a favor, Mr. Mafia. Please, please make a public announcement or something that I mean nothing to you." Taehyung glancing at her with a smirk. "And why would I do that? Yn, to save this pretty, innocent, harmless life. I'm too cute to die." She whined dramatically. Taehyung chuckled under his breath. Taehyung, "Too late, princess. They already saw you with me. Even if I announce you're no one, they won't believe it." Yn muttering to herself, "I should have just jumped into a dumpster. It would have been safer, and smell better than your enemies." Taehyung, "Not too late for that, Mrs. William. Want me to drop you off at the next one?" She glared at him, but stayed silent. Taehyung pulled into a rundown gas station at the edge of nowhere. The building looked abandoned, half cracked and hollow, but the overhang gave just enough shelter to stop. He killed the engine. The silence that followed was thick and instant. Yn sat curled in the passenger seat, arms crossed, still sulking. Her once bright wedding gown was now a wrinkled mess of tulle and dirt. Her cheeks were flush pink from exhaustion, frustration, maybe even fear. Taehyung, We'll stop here for a while. They won't find us tonight, he said calmly. She didn't answer, just stared at the raindrops as they tapped softly on the windshield. A moment passed, then Taehyung got out without a word. YRN watched him through the blurry glass as he moved around to the trunk, pulled out an old blanket and a paper bag, then came back. He opened her door and gently draped the blanket over her shoulders. YRN muttering, "I'm not cold." Taehyung didn't ask. He sat back down in the driver's seat and tossed her a chocolate bar from the bag. Taehyung, eat. You look like you'll pass out and haunt me, just to be annoying. YN blinked down at the chocolate. Her lips twitched, almost unwillingly. YRN, you think I'm that petty? Taehyung, I think you crawled into a stranger's car, insulted my skills, threw jewelry at my dashboard, and growled at me like an angry raccoon. So yeah, extremely petty. A small, reluctant snort escaped her. She took a bite of the chocolate. Silence returned, but it felt different now, quieter, softer. She peeked at him under the blanket, her voice small. YRN gently, you're really not gonna kill me, right? Taehyung didn't look at her. He just leaned his head back against the seat, eyes closed, voice low. Taehyung, no, you're not worth the cleanup. Mrs. William, she pouted, but her shoulders eased a little beneath the blanket. The rain kept falling in a slow, soothing rhythm. She tucked the blanket tighter, took another bite of chocolate, and leaned her head lightly against the cool glass of the window. For the first time since she ran, she felt still. YN softly, thank you for not throwing me out, and for saving my life, even if my life's only in danger because of you. Taehyung, I didn't invite you into my car, he said without opening his eyes, but this time, there was the faintest edge of a smile in his voice. The rain was still falling light and steady, wrapping the world in a hush. YRN stayed curled under the blanket, her cheek pressed to the cold window. The chocolate bar sat half-eaten in her lap. Taehyung hadn't spoken in a while. His eyes were still closed, head leaning back, calm and unreadable. Maybe that's why she finally let herself speak. YN softly, I didn't run just from the wedding. I ran from everything. Taehyung didn't open his eyes, but his head tilted slightly, as if listening. She took a breath. YRN, my parents died in a car accident when I was 16. One minute we were laughing in the car. The next, everything just stopped. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. YN, my uncle and aunt took me in. I thought I'd have a family again, but I was just free labor in a pretty dress. I cooked, cleaned, ran errands, smiled for their guests like I was some perfect niece. She laughed bitterly, eyes still on the rain. YN, they made me feel like I owed them everything, and maybe I did. I had nowhere else to go, no money, no one. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. YN, so when they fixed my marriage with some rich old man, I smiled again, pretended I was happy, until this morning, when I looked in the mirror and saw someone who didn't look like me anymore. A pause, just the sound of rain. YRN quieter. So I ran, in a stupid wedding gown and heels that gave me blisters. I didn't care where I ended up. She let out a shaky breath. YN, I just wanted to feel free, even if it meant hiding in a stranger's car and nearly dying. She glanced at him, then half expecting silence, or mockery, but Taehyung was still unreadable. His eyes were open now, dark and unreadable, staring out into the rain. Taehyung quietly, you stayed, because you had nowhere else to go. She nodded. Taehyung after a pause, you're not the only one who's been stuck in someone else's world. YN, she blinked at the sound of her name, no sarcastic title this time, just her. They sat like that for a while, no more words, just the rain, and in that broken down gas station, with a blanket, chocolate, and a wounded heart laid bare, something unnamed began to shift between them. The only sounds now were the soft hum of rain and the ticking of the cooling engine. YRN had finished the chocolate and was absent-mindedly peeling the wrapper into tiny strips. Her gaze drifted over to Taehyung. He was still leaned back in the driver's seat, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded, like he might drift off, but his jaw was tense. She hesitated before breaking the silence again. YN, do you ever regret it? Taehyung, regret what? YN, becoming what you are, Mafia king or whatever. Don't you ever wish you had a normal life? He didn't answer right away. For once, there was no sarcasm on his tongue. Taehyung, normal doesn't exist for people like me. He finally turned his head to look at her. The usual sharpness in his gaze softened just a little. Taehyung, I stopped wishing for it a long time ago. YN nodded slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. YN, I used to wish I had parents like the ones in those perfect movies. You know, big breakfasts, silly fights, hugs before bed. She laughed a little to herself bitterly. YN, instead, I got an uncle who sold me to an old man because I couldn't pay for groceries. Her voice cracked at the end. She quickly looked away, blinking fast. Taehyung didn't say anything for a moment, then spoke, gently so softly it didn't match his usual tone. Taehyung, you deserve better. YN turned to him, surprised. He was still looking at her, and this time, there was no smirk, no walls, just truth. She held his gaze for a second too long, then quickly looked down. YN, thanks, I think, I just needed to hear that. A pause. After a beat he spoke. Taehyung, you snore, by the way. YN wide-eyed. What? No, I don't. Taehyung smirking again, like a baby dragon with a cold. YN gasped, swatted his arm with the empty wrapper and laughed. The sound was light, warm, and for a moment, the weight in the car lifted. The laughter lingered in the air longer than either of them expected. It felt strange, that sound so full and real between two broken people hiding from the world. YN's cheeks were still pink from laughing, her eyes bright despite the exhaustion. Taehyung was watching her more openly now. There was no teasing in his gaze anymore, only something deeper, warmer. Something that made her breath hitch. Silence fell again, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. It pulsed between them, slow and electric. Taehyung shifted in his seat, leaning a little closer. His voice was lower now, not cold, not mocking, just honest. Taehyung, you know what's strange? YN blinked, her heart already thudding faster. YN, what? Taehyung, you're the first person who's made me feel like I could breathe, like I'm not made of stone. She swallowed, her throat dry. YN whispering, well, I'm glad to hear it. He leaned even closer now, close enough that she could see the shadows under his eyes, the tired beauty of him dangerous, yes, but also human. Taehyung, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be with someone like me. YN, then tell me to leave. He didn't. The space between them vanished. His hand reached out, slow and deliberate, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered on her cheek, tracing the curve of it gently like she was something fragile and fleeting. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second. And then he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't rough. It was slow, achingly so, like he had wanted to for a long time but only just let himself admit it. His hand cupped her jaw, thumb brushing her cheek as his lips moved against hers with surprising tenderness. YN melted into it, her hands instinctively gripping his shirt, anchoring herself. Her heart thundered in her chest, but her body felt weightless, floating in the warmth of him. The rain, the night, when they finally pulled back, their foreheads rested together, breaths mingling. Taehyung husky, barely above a whisper, your trouble. YN smiling against his lips, you started it. He chuckled, low and deep, and leaned in again, this time slower, more lingering. Another kiss sweeter, then one just below her jaw. And another behind her ear, where her breath caught. The rain softened around them like a curtain, cocooning them in a world that, just for tonight, didn't demand explanations. They stayed like that, entangled in warmth, in breath, in a kiss that said everything they were too afraid to say. Soft sunbeams filtered through the cracked windshield, golden light brushing across YN's face like a kiss. She shifted slightly in her seat, the old blanket still wrapped around her, Taehyung's scent clinging to her like comfort. Her head was resting against his shoulder, their hands still loosely entwined from the night before. For the first time in forever, she felt full, not with food, not with safety, but with something much rarer, hope. She had fallen asleep to the rhythm of his heartbeat, his warmth had lulled her into a dreamless slumber, and now, her lips curled into a sleepy smile. YN murmuring softly, I wish I could stay in this moment forever. She reached out instinctively, searching for him, but the seat beside her was cold, her brows furrowed. She sat up slowly, blinking against the sunlight, still wrapped in the blanket. She glanced around, the car, empty. No sign of Taehyung. Confused, she turned her gaze toward the window, and her heart stopped. There, leaning against the window, was the face she had tried so hard to forget. Mr. William. His smile was sickeningly sweet, like something that had soured in the sun. William, rise and shine, darling. Before she could scream, the car door flew open. Rough hands grabbed her, yanking her out onto the gravel. Her bare feet scraped against the cold ground. And no, let go of me. Her aunt appeared, face twisted with fake concern as she clutched her arm like a leash. Aunt, you've embarrassed us enough, girl. You're coming home, now. Yn thrashed against their grip, tears streaking down her cheeks. No, please, don't let me go. She cried out desperately, her eyes scanning wildly for one person, one man, and then she saw him. Taehyung, leaning casually against the car, cigarette between his lips, arms crossed over his chest like none of it concerned him, cold, silent, untouched. Yn sobbing, Taehyung, please, help me, Taehyung. Her voice cracked with heartbreak. She reached for him like he was her lifeline, but he didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even look at her. He took a slow drag of his cigarette, eyes cast downward, like her screams were part of the breeze. Yn screaming, Taehyung. Her cries echoed across the empty road. He stayed still. They dragged her toward another car. Mr. William followed closely, his laughter cold and gleeful. Her aunt whispered vile things in her ear. Her uncle counted bills with a smug grin, and Taehyung, the man who held her so gently last night, didn't come, didn't fight, didn't speak, didn't care. The blanket she had slept in slipped from her shoulders, landing in the dirt, and just like that the dream was over.